He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Kia ora, and a very warm welcome to the Kākāpō Files from RNZ. Ko Alison balance ahau. We are the podcast that is all about Kākāpō all of the time. And in this breeding season to beat all breeding seasons, there is no shortage of excitement and news. An awful lot has been happening on the Kākāpō Islands since the last episode 2 weeks ago. There have been more eggs laid, more chicks hatched. Kākāpō mums are flat out feeding their little ones, which are growing by the day. And Kākāpō rangers are being kept very busy, delivering pipping eggs to nests and carrying out nightly health checks on the chicks. Let's start with a call to Pukenui Anchor Island to catch up with Kākāpō Ranger Maddy Whittaker, who is going to give us the very latest numbers and news.
Kia ora, Maddy. How are things out on Anchor Island?
It's all go. We are definitely well into the breeding season now and well into a rhythm of night work and getting to see chicks at nests pretty much every day. So, no, it's good but busy.
Well, let's just jump straight into the numbers for everyone. So where are we at with numbers of nests?
Yeah, so we've got 29 on Whenua Hou, 39 on Anchor and 10 on Te Kakahu. So that's a total of 78 nests.
That's a lot of nests. What are the egg numbers? I know we sort of passed the total number of living Kākāpō a few days ago. So where are we at now?
Yeah, so 247 is our official count. However, we've likely passed 250 because there are 2 nests on Te Kakahu which we haven't checked yet. We can see that those 2 birds, Rimu and Tuarua, they're likely incubating. But yeah, of the official count, 145 of them are fertile, and 40 of the fertile ones we have lost. They've died, and then 98 eggs are infertile.
Quick arithmetic, that's 105 viable eggs that remain.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
105. Amazing.
105, yeah. And of those, 54 have turned into chicks so far.
54 chicks.
Which is very exciting. And we think that there is up to 7 chicks on Te Kakahu by now. So potentially up to 61 chicks. And we think that those ones on Te Kakahu may have hatched based on the activity of mum. So when the mum is incubating eggs, she has a certain pattern that often gets off just once in the night, sometimes twice, but she's focused on keeping that egg really warm. And then once she has little chicks, she starts to get off a little bit more. And then by the time she's got a week-old chick, she's often getting off, 2-3 times a night, but for a longer period, and her activity is higher. So you can see a real change there. And so we're seeing that with some of the mums on Te Kakahu, which is what is making us think that 7 of those nests out there might have chicks now. So yeah, at least 54 chicks, but could be more.
So, of course, there's no one permanently based on Te Kakahu, Chalky. When's someone likely to go down and check in the field?
Current plan is to go in just before they fledge, and that's when the chicks will get their transmitters and they'll get microchipped. So yeah, it could be quite some time actually before we go there.
Now, several listeners have commented to me that I talk a lot about the females and not so much about the males. So can you just update me? What are all the males up to at the moment?
Yeah, so we've still got some males who are booming. I hear them when I'm walking home in the middle of the night. The booming is a little bit half-hearted compared to what it was. I guess they've been going pretty hard for a few months now, so a lot of them will be getting quite tired. They will have lost quite a lot of weight because they've been busy booming all night instead of feeding. And some of them have called it quits for the season. So say we caught a young man called George for a transmitter change, and he had gone back to his winter range about 2 weeks ago now, and yeah, he was down around the 2 kilogram mark, so he'd sort of given quite a lot, and then been like, no, I don't have anything left, I'm going to go back to my winter range and do some more feeding, gain some weight back. So yeah, we're starting to see that with a few birds.
Oh, I think they deserve a break.
Definitely. And I guess, especially on anchor, all the females have mated and got nests now. It must feel a little bit futile if the boys are boobing away for, the last month and they're not getting any females coming and seeing them. It must be a little bit discouraging.
There is a full house on Pukenui Anchor Island. Like every adult female has nested, plus the 3 4-year-olds. It's a bit different on Whenua Hou, isn't it? Because not all of the females have nested there yet.
Yeah, it's a little bit slower on Whenua Hou than we initially thought.
There's a couple of females who haven't yet nested on Whenua Hou who are a bit surprising, Sue and Tukaha, both of whom had artificial insemination. So it's interesting that they haven't settled to nest yet.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the other ones on Whenua Hou that haven't nested, it's not entirely surprising. Jean's quite old. She hasn't nested, I think, since 2016. We would have hoped for sure that Sue and Tukaha would have gone by now, but the birds like to keep you on your toes. And unfortunately, as we've lost one nest on Whenua Hou, so Alice abandoned her nest after a petrol encounter, likely resulted in her egg getting crushed, and she stayed one more night and then left the next day. She sort of had egg all over her, and sort of tried to keep her in her nest by catching her and putting her back in and giving her a dummy egg, but she decided that she'd had enough. So that's one nest that we've lost this season.
Yeah, because of course they're trying to keep as many females as possible nesting so that they can spread the chicks around.
Absolutely. The sort of plan is to try and have everyone with, at least one fertile egg. On anchor, we've managed to keep most chicks with their mum, so their biological mum, I guess. But it's been a little bit different on Whenua Hou. So in order to have everyone with a fertile egg, they've had to do some shuffles, but they've also taken into account sort of how good or experienced a mum is, particularly at feeding. If a mum is a really great feeder, then a chick that isn't doing as well might go to that mum as opposed to its biological mum. And then some of the younger, less experienced mums are getting chicks that are a bit healthier. And that's actually quite a dynamic thing. They've had some mums on Whenua Hou that are really, really great at feeding. And if a chick isn't doing well in another nest, they just might cycle it through that nest to get a little top up and then go back to the other one, which is really letting the birds do the work there.
The chicks staying on the islands they hatch on?
So up until this point, mostly, we had a couple of, I guess, eggs that went from anchor to Te Kakahu. But today we are running a reasonably big operation to bring 5 chicks from Whenua Hou to anchor. And so this is happening because the chicks on anchor are doing a bit better than the chicks on Whenua Hou. And this isn't entirely surprising. We always knew it was more likely that the Rimu on anchor was going to ripen. Yeah, that's what we're seeing. So when I, was walking the tracks last night, coming back from nest, there's red Rimu fruit on the ground here on anchor in a lot of places, which is really great to see. Whereas on Whenua Hou, they're not seeing any ripening yet. And there's a chance it might not ripen at all. So yeah, what they're trying to do there is just some of the nests where there's 2 chicks and it's just a bit much for mum to be able to keep both those chicks' weights up without that Rimu fruit. They're sending those second chicks out here to anchor to be raised on the Rimu fruit out here.
Have we lost any chicks?
Only one chick, which is quite amazing, really. So yeah, we lost one chick on anchor, and we don't actually know why that chick died. We have lost a few eggs at point of hatch. That's usually from malpositioning. So we want the chicks to sort of internally pip into the air cell, which is sort of the less pointy end of the egg. However, we've had some trying to go out sort of the side of the egg or the pointy end of the egg. And because this just isn't the best way for them to exit, they sort of end up tiring themselves out, and they also don't get the air that they need. So that's sort of how they end up dying, as a mixture of fatigue and not having enough air, really.
Now, I would like to follow up on my special family, grandmum Cyndy, mum Queenie and daughter Alison. Can you update me with what those 3 are up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alison, we finally found her nest. It was a pretty big effort out here. She isn't even actually that far from a track, but she's in a very rolly area where the signal can be quite hard to find. So, yeah, it was a bit of a mission to find her nest. Took 5 days or so, but no, we've got her on the grid now, and her eggs were all infertile. But last night she received Pakiki A1, an egg laid by one of our 3-year-olds, actually. That's a silver value egg, and that's, due to hatch on the 14th of March. Pakiki A2 she will also get, but it's just going to be watched in the incubator for a bit longer before it goes out.
I hope she's a good mum.
Yeah, and she might have a few things stacked against her. We'll have to see. We've had really heavy rain out here on Anchor, which is a test for all of the nests. But Alison has nested in a particularly flood-prone area of the forest. So when the other night, all of the forest around her, like she's not in a stream or anything, but just the volume of rain meant that most of the forest had water throughout it, and if the water had come up another 10 centimetres, it would have started going into her nest with quite some force. So, well, hopefully she's all right there.
Oh dear, the trials and tribulations of being a first-time mum.
Absolutely. And a first-time mum with, vision in one eye. She's doing great. I'm rooting for her.
We do have to remember she has had the odds stacked against her with her broken leg and then her re-broken leg and her loss of an eye. So I really hope she does well. What about Queenie and Cyndy? Cyndy didn't have fertile eggs, Queenie did, but what are they up to at the moment?
Yeah, so Cyndy has Bella A1 and Bella A2 silver eggs, and on the 7th of March, Bella A1 was seen as a chick in the nest there. So, she's in full mum mode, which is very exciting. And Queenie is currently still sitting on dummy eggs, but if all goes to plan, she's going to receive Pearl A2 and Queenie A3, which are expected to hatch on the 16th and the 19th, respectively. And her nest is going to be checked according to a bronze regime. And then Queenie's other eggs are currently in the incubator on Whenua Hou. One of those eggs, Queenie A1, is going to go to Bella, and Queenie A2 is going to go to Ruth.
Well, I'm wondering what the chicks are starting to look like, and I'm thinking particularly Tifere A1, who was the very first chick to hatch on February the 14th. How's that chick getting on, and what does it weigh now, and what does a chick that's, 3.5 weeks old look like?
Yeah, so we've seen big changes in the chicks. You start off and they're, I saw Tifere A1 when it was, less than 30 grams, smaller than the palm of my hand. And now Tifere A1 is 520 grams. So that's a lot of chick and a lot of personality. They start to be able to hold up their head sort of around that 100-gram mark, and that really brings out their personality. If you imagine the two old men in the Muppets, that's very much the vibe of the chicks. Once they start holding their head up, they sort of are looking around, and when you come into the nest, they open their mouth up thinking that you're going to give them food, but then they don't quite have full control, so they're a little bit wobbly. Sometimes they sort of almost overbalance backwards and they sort of rock back onto their bum. It's quite comical. Some of them are very sassy. They'll hiss at you when you come into the nest. Other ones are much more relaxed. But Tifere A1, our oldest chick on the island, I'd say pre-dinosaur vibes, so not getting any of those feathers yet, and not looking like a dinosaur, but getting close, and you can start to see some of those feathers developing. Not colourful feathers yet, but just the sort of pin part of them. So it makes it look like he's got sort of blue dots all over.
They don't sound particularly good looking at this point.
No, I would say they have lost their sort of fluffy cloud charm, and they're definitely in an awkward teenage stage. And it looks quite uncomfortable, the process of growing feathers. For context, like Tifere A1 at 520 grams, the mums are often not more than 1 kilo. So this chick is quite big compared to mum, and it won't be long before we start seeing some chicks that might be bigger than mum. So that's pretty incredible.
Thanks, Maddy. Now, Maddy mentioned silver chicks and bronze chicks. To tell us more about the significance of that, we're going to catch up with science advisor Andrew Digby, who is also out on Pukenui, Anchor Island.
Kia ora, Andrew.
Kia ora.
I would love to talk to you about the ranking system because it's a bit like that George Orwell quote where all kakapo are equal, but some kakapo are more equal than others.
Yeah, exactly. That's really true. And the reason, I think, first of all, we understand why we need a ranking system. And the reason that we do is because we have to prioritise our care of kakapo. We have sufficient numbers now that we can't just put the same amount of effort in to each individual that we have in the past. So we need to step back. And that's one of the big themes of this breeding season is how can we reduce our management intensity. And the ranking lets us do that. So what we do is we prioritise nests and individuals based on their genetic ranking. And we give each individual either a ranking of gold, silver, bronze, or chalk. Gold being the highest, obviously, chalk being the lowest. And so that's how we prioritise. And we have a genetic sort of scoring system to enable us to do that.
So tell me a bit more about that.
So the scoring system that we use is from a piece of software called PMX, and it produces a number called a Mate Suitability Index. MSI is the score. And it's based on a range of 1 to 7, where 1 is good, 7 is bad. And we get a score for each pair. So for every male-female combination, we have a number, a Mate Suitability Index for that pair. And so if that pairing has a score of 1 or 2, it becomes a gold, or a silver is 3, bronze is 4, and then chalk if it's 5 to 7. That score combines several genetic metrics from our genome data. So for each individual that's hatched or each egg, we know who its parents might be. And so then we can assign it a genetic score accordingly.
So some kakapo are simply more important because there's not many of their genes. And I'm thinking of something like Bluster Murphy as an example, perhaps?
Yeah, that's right. That combines quite a few different things. So it combines things like the mean kinship, so how related a bird is or a potential bird is to all others, the inbreeding, those sort of things. And it kind of combines it all into that one index. And then we also tweak things a little bit as well. So for example, if an individual has fewer than 4 offspring, then we automatically make their offspring a gold chick. So yeah, we do a little bit of tweaking on top of that MSI score as well.
Is it a bit tricky for you this summer because not all the matings have been detected?
Yes, it is. And what we have to do is we can assign each female a score as well. So she gets the score based on her mean kinship, so how related she is to everyone else. On Anchor, for example, Kuia is a silver female, but depending on who she mates with, she then might have gold offspring or perhaps bronze offspring. And that's the case this year. So she's a silver female, but because of whom she mated with, she ends up with bronze offspring. So there's a bit of we have the score for the female. And then once we know who the partner is, then we can individualize that to the actual chick level. And in some cases where we don't know who the male is, we kind of tend to assume they've mated with someone quite suitable. And so we kind of err on the side of making higher ranking rather than lower ranking.
Because Whenua Hou is your more intensive hands-on island, have you put more of the higher ranked females and males on that island?
Yeah, that's right. So for example, we have a lot more gold birds, for example, on Whenua Hou than we do on Anchor. Anchor has many more silver and bronzes and chalks too.
So looking at this year's eggs that have been produced so far, what's it looking like in terms of numbers of golds and silvers, bronzes, etc.?
Yeah, so if I use Anchor as an example, we were planning to have around about 8 in each category. So 8 gold, 8 silver, 8 bronze, and 8 chalk. We've ended up with only 3 gold and 3 silver on Anchor. And the way that we're doing it on Anchor is we're actually stepping back quite a lot. So we're actually treating those gold nests as silver from a management point of view. We've ended up with 20 bronze nests and 13 chalk nests. And we've tweaked things a little bit based on the type of nest it is and other factors as well, because we want to have more nests or more chicks in those lower categories, more in the bronze and more in the chalk, especially on Anchor, because that's the approach we're taking of a more hands-off, lighter touch.
So if you're a gold chick, what kind of attention do you get?
You get a lot more checks. So one of the things we do is we check the chicks. We check them quite frequently, depending on their status. And so, for example, if you're a gold chick, you get checked every night for the first 4 nights. Whereas if you're a bronze chick, you only get checked twice for the first 4 nights. And then for the next couple of weeks after that, if you're gold, you might get checked every 3 nights, but if you're bronze, you only get checked every 5 nights. And if you're chalk, we only check those chicks roughly when they hatch, around about the first few days. And then we don't really check them at all. We're trying not to check them for the next couple of months until they're just before fledging. So it's a really different approach. And that's what we did on Te Kakahu, Chalky Island last year with the 3 nests we had there. And this year we have 10, possibly 11 nests out there, and we're doing the same process. Plus, we also have some chalk nests on Pukenui and Kākāpō Island as well. So we have a real range in how often we're visiting nests. There's a massive difference between, going every night for some of the gold nests and then, only going a few times in 3 months for the chalk nests.
So what are your gold chicks on anchor?
On anchor, we actually only have 3 of them. And those ones are Hoturu, Tifidi, and Yasmin. So the chicks in those nests. Then we have 3 silvers, Boomer, Galaxy, and Hananui.
So Tifidi A1, who was the first chick to hatch in the middle of February, that's a gold chick.
That's gold, that's right, yes. And she's in Yasmin, and unfortunately, she's actually right near the hut. So it's easy for us to keep an eye on her. And it's, it sounds a little bit pragmatic, but there is a practical element to this. We only have a certain amount of time. And so we try to have to manage that as much as possible to fit in with just logistically how easy is it to get to some of these nests.
The only other chicks that I've heard about are Vori A1, who I think is silver, and Nora A2, who's gold. And they're fostered to Rakiura, the Kākāpō Cam bird.
Yes, that's right. Yep. And those ones are doing well.
So what else have you got going on at the moment, Andrew?
So we have a new project this year, which I'm particularly excited about, of a new method of sexing the chicks as they're hatched. And the reason that we want to know the sex of the chicks is, well, there's a few reasons. And we want to know because we prioritize the care of males and females differently. In the past, we've always given more attention and more care to a female chick. They're more valuable to us. But we've also learned in recent years things, for example, like if male chicks are hand-reared, they tend to have lower fertility. So if we have a choice between keeping a chick in a nest or hand-rearing it, then we'll try to keep the male chicks in the nest rather than the females. And another reason we want to know why a chick is a male or a female is because they have different growth rates. And the growth rates are really important to us. That's how one of the main metrics we have for how well a chick is doing. How does it track compared to the average for that particular age for that chick? And then for that sex, because the males grow faster than the females. So they have different weight curves that they follow. And so knowing whether a chick is following a male weight curve or a female weight curve is really important. And historically, it's taken us quite a long while to get the sex of the chicks because we've had to bleed the chicks, get a little bit of blood from them. We can only normally do that when they're several weeks old. And then we'd normally send that away to a lab where some genetic work would be done and we'd get results back. And typically, it would take us in the order of months to get those results. But we want to be able to manage the chicks and compare their weight graphs and manipulate them, move them between nests, for example. We want to do that now. So waiting months was a real problem for us. We wanted to try and get that time down as much as possible.
So what's the system you're using?
So the system we're using is called PCR, and we've been working with Denature, who are primary industry's genetic company in the Hawke's Bay, who do a lot of things like, for example, beehive disease testing or kiwi fruit disease testing, that sort of thing. And they've worked with us to develop a test for sexing chicks of both Kākāpō and Tākāpō, to combine both of those into one assay. And we've started using that for Tākāpō over the last few months, and now we're using it for Kākāpō. And for Kākāpō, we have a very simple process. All we do is take a tiny little cotton swab the bill of the chick. And I've been doing that for chicks which are only just a few hours old. So you can do it when they're very, very young. We then have a little machine, a little PCR cycling machine on the island, which you can plug into a laptop. We do a little bit of processing to extract the DNA. It's a very simple process. Put it in the machine and we can get up to 46 sexes of chicks in under an hour from this machine. So I've been doing it recently and I've sampled a chick one night and the next morning do the run. So yeah, within a day we get the sex of a chick rather than waiting weeks and possibly even months like we have done in the past.
That's game-changing, really.
Yeah, it really is. We have one of these machines on each of the islands, so we can do it in situ as well. So yeah, we know straight away. And so it's making a big impact on our management this season. So yeah, I'm particularly excited about this, being able to put this into practice. And there's other applications as well. We like we can use these machines potentially for things like disease testing in future as well. So it's, I guess, an example of trying to use some technology to make the management much more streamlined and more effective. And yep, so far so good.
So have you managed to sex T40A1 yet, Andrew?
Yes, we have. So T40A1 and T40A2, who are both in Yasmin's nest, are both males. T40A3 and 4 are a female and a male respectively, and they're in T40's nest. We've actually had quite a few males so far, which is slightly concerning. We want to try and get an even sex ratio. And this is on Pukenui anchor, and we suspect there might be something to do with food supply. That actually, because the females are in really good condition because of all the food this year, they might be having more male chicks. But yeah, it's still a little bit early days. We've still got quite a few more to sex. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one.
Thanks, Andrew. Now, while we're all focusing on the growing number of Kākāpō chicks this summer, especially on Pukenui Anchor Island, which is leading the way both in terms of timing and numbers, let us not forget that out on Whenua Hou there are still plenty of eggs being safely incubated in the egg room down at the hut. Kākāpō lay small eggs for their body size, sort of bantam size. 3 eggs is an average clutch size, but having said that, a quarter of the females this season have laid 4 eggs, and Yasmin laid 5. Sadly, those were all infertile. The eggs are laid 3 days apart and each takes about 30 days to develop. Over the decades, the Kākāpō team has closely observed the development of hundreds of eggs, and they can now precisely tell how many days old an egg is. When I was out on Whenua Hou, I popped into the egg room to ask expert Alyssa Salton to talk us through how a chick develops in the egg. So day 1, and the egg is laid.
On day 2, if you're really lucky and you look very closely, you might see the tiniest, faintest little dot kind of on top of the yolk. And then the next day you'll see a very small germinal disc, or like little yolk sac membrane that's very small. And then the next day there's a couple of wee veins in there. And then after that, on about day 5, we can actually see the embryo. And it's still very, very small. And then for the next kind of few days it starts growing. We can actually see the eye really visibly, and we can see the embryo wiggling away, and actually in 6 to about 8 days we can actually see the heart beating. So
wow,
yeah. So that's very cool. Everybody really likes seeing that. And then from there on they grow more, they kind of sink down into the egg, so you don't see the eye as much after that, but they move a lot. All the veins, all the vascular network grows, and all the membranes come around and close up together, and then we're just watching the chick grow really. The oldest one in this portacom is actually now old enough that we're getting little waste deposits as well in the bottom of the egg, so that just tells us that the chick's growing really well. It also tells us that it's in the right position in the egg, because everything's kind of appearing where we'd expect it to do, and it's just going through that really rapid growth phase now as it heads towards its hatching date.
So all the energy for it's coming from that yolk?
Yeah, it is. So they're using that to get all of the energy, and they're also being turned, which helps the albumin or the egg white kind of wash over them, and that helps they pull all the nutrients out of that as well.
Now there's an airspace inside the egg. What purpose does that serve, and what happens to that over time?
Yeah, so we call that the ear cell, and it starts very small when they're fresh, and then as they grow, it grows. So it actually becomes quite big. So towards the end, it's not quite half the egg, but it becomes very big, and that's for when the chick, we'd call it internally pipping, and so that's where they move into pulmonary respiration, which means the little chicks poked their wee beak through a very thin membrane into the ear cell, and then they're just breathing in there, and that's them just breathing away, getting used to that, and kind of doing all that final shutting down of all of their vascular network and just the last absorbing of the yolk, and then they're kind of ready to go, and then they'll work their way through to do an external pip, which is breaking through the shell. And then over the next day or 2 they'll work away, almost like a wee can opener, working their way, kind of cracking around a little bit, and then we'll get the actual hatch.
So what are they using to crack themselves out of the egg?
So they have a little tiny egg tooth on the end of their beak. You can only see it for a very short period of time, but that's actually there just to help them really break away at the shell. And then
It's like having a prenatal baby scan, isn't it? The little peek you have into the egg each day.
it is. It's amazing what you can see, and anybody that's come in to see what I'm doing in here, because I am in a bit of a hidden wee room, has been really amazed by how much you can actually see developing on the inside.
Thanks, Alyssa. And many thanks to all of this week's Kākāpō experts. Egg guru Alyssa Salton, science whiz Dr. Andrew Digby, and keen Kākāpō ranger Maddy Whittaker. The Kākāpō Files is produced by me, Alison Balance, with help from RNZ's Claire Concannon and Brianna Uritich-Gregg. Episode 12 was mixed by sound engineer Phil Benge. The Kākāpō Files is made in collaboration with the Kākāpō Recovery Programme at the New Zealand Department of Conservation. Every Friday on their Facebook page is Fridge Friday, when they post the latest breeding update direct from a genuine fridge door on a Kākāpō breeding island. Please send us your Kākāpō questions to kākāpō@rnz.co.nz. You can find the Kākāpō Files at rnz.co.nz or wherever you usually listen to podcasts. Ratings and reviews are always very much appreciated, and please do share the podcast with friends and family. Positive nature news is such a wonderful gift in this tumultuous world. I'll be back in a fortnight with all the latest Kākāpō news. Until then, thanks for listening, take care, mā te wā.